have a look what came out of the Navigator's area from the Volvo Amazon. I'm guessing that my arrangement of kit is very similar to many other Navigators. Let's dispense with the easy stuff first. Water in some easily accessible form. I tend to get through about 2 of those a day rallying. So I fill up that bottle and that seems to float around underneath my seat. And this one I lie adjacent to Gareth's seat so I can reach it easily. Not my own seat because I can't see it. So I tend to lie that down in the between the transmission tunnel and Gareth's seat, and it just sits there. Okay, let's get rid of those. What's on me? Satellite watch, very useful because by and large rally time will often agree with a satellite or a GPS watch, for instance, anything that gets a time signal and adjusts to the time signal. So that's a useful one. And what it means is also that obviously at the beginning of the rally you're going to make sure your clock agrees with rally time, and each morning I will tend to check that the Brantz hasn't drifted and is still accurate. So there we go, that's my watch. Where should we put that? That down here as well. Stopwatch, never used actually, so let's not talk about that. Didn't touch it. If your eyesight, near eyesight isn't perfect, or you're getting beyond 50, sadly, then you want spectacles on the end of your lanyard. So they just sit round your neck the entire event. And get some fairly robust spectacles because they tend to get a bit of abuse. The rather elegant ones that I just got from the optician last week were definitely too girly for rallying. I'm quite surprised they survived at all actually. Okay, particularly for night if you're young, and in daytime if you're possibly my age or older, is the potty. Let's just have a quick look at it. If you haven't seen a potty before, it's a magnifying glass, but it has, in with the batteries, illuminated. There we go. So now I found myself using that quite a lot as soon as we got into the forests, and you're using the white on the OS maps. In the forest, that makes life a lot easier to see which track you're looking at, because you might have 3 or 4 tracks all merging into one position and you've got to choose which one you're going to come out on. That, in fact, yeah, that's usually whites, full stop, is where that's particularly useful. But there are some coloured junctions as well, coloured road junctions, that can get very close together and muddled up. And just to get some perception of what the map thinks they're doing will help you. So, potty. In my rally bag, at the beginning of each day, out comes my Curter, and the Curter is a mechanical calculator, and you can dial in here on the slides the speed that is required. So let's say the section requires 28 miles per hour, then you will dial in 2143 on here, which is 28 miles an hour in decimal. And each time you wind this on, I've got it set to wind on 0.1 of a mile. And you'll see here the decimal time that 0.1 of a mile should have taken. Rather lovely, and certainly I wouldn't have achieved 11th on this event had I not got this. If I was still using speed timetables, particularly on the last day, there are a couple of very rapid, very small speed changes for very short distances, and the Curter handles those extremely well, whereas you have to be of the sort of talent of Martin Taylor to be able to keep up with those on speed timetables. In here, there's also a spare pair of glasses, that's the important bit. My extra pens, highlighters. There's another good one. Okay, this could be useful. If your eyesight's actually quite good, but every now and then you need something, then a illuminating magnifying glass will be fine instead of a potty. However, this one's pretty rubbish. I really should get rid of that, actually. And a present from my daughter, which again, particularly useful in night rallying, is of course the head torch. And that really is helpful until you start looking up for a junction in Walcott military ranges. You look up like that, and your driver can't see a blessed thing out the window, apparently. So I was told in no uncertain terms.
Drivers shout a lot when that happens.
So watch out for that. Maybe if there is potential for being slightly unwell, then carry some appropriate motion sickness tablets, but be careful of that. Of course, some will have a soporific effect, so make sure you get the ones that work for you and the ones that aren't soporific. Is there anything else in this section here? These can be useful. Post-it marker tabs, like so. Those can be very useful. I use them less on maps now, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but in the road book, when you've got maybe a regularity halfway through the road book, it's quite nice just to tab that up and put R23, regularity day 2, regularity 3, R23. So that's those can be useful. I used to use them for marking up my maps, but they have a habit of falling off, and B, Emma has now bought me these gorgeous pens, erasable pens, and particularly the sort of this royal blue one isn't a colour that Ordnance Survey use, so it's always pretty clear when you've got them. These pens are called Frixion, Frixion, Frixion Pilot, and you can either get them as straight pens or highlighters, and they're both erasable. Okay, so you just leave them for maybe 30 seconds and then you can just rub them out with the other end. That's why they're so powerful. The highlighter, probably not. I think, to be honest, I prefer normal broad-tipped highlighters. So I'm not sure I'd recommend those, but these are just a godsend, especially when your eyesight gets a bit poorer and it's not so easy to see 2B or 3B pencil marks on your map. And also, if you're an idiot like me sometimes, I spent 5 minutes following a railway line whilst navigating for Amy on the East Anglian rally before I realised that I wasn't following my black pencil mark at all, and we had to turn back. Anything else in there? Not really. But of course, your finals, the rally list, which of course is helpful as each day the rally gets reorganised to recognise which car you're running behind, so you know how to queue up and whether you want to jump ahead in a queue if you've just picked up fuel or you got delayed or you're wrong slotted for the next competitive. You will usually try and move into your place in the queue, and obviously one is very polite about this, and it's the correct way to go about it, to try and stay in the correct sequence. Helps the marshals, helps you, and usually other competitors, particularly as the experienced competitors, will always let you come back into your correct slot. Your boards, well of course you've also got to have your OK SOS board as well, near at hand. That a lot of people actually store that in the car rather than have the Navigator storing it, but I keep one in my rally bag all the time, just in case, because that is a scrutineering fail not to have that. And then clipboards for various uses. It might be that your time card will come as a loose card instead of being the chipping type, which comes all as its own integral unit. So typically I would want to be carrying 3 clipboards in my rally bag at any one time. Okay, so that's that bag, and that sits underneath my legs. So it will sit in front of my seat and behind my legs there, so I can rummage around in it should I need it. Okay, that's out of the way then, I think we've done that. Gosh, would you just like to look at the scrutineering card? So this is what is checked by the marshals, by the scrutineers before the start of the event, before you're permitted even to sign on. And this is, as I say, the rally of the tests. So we have the identification, car 33, and its details, all lights working, yeah, horn working, battery fitted safely, in other words, secure, and with the negative correctly marked in yellow, and with the positive, assuming you're negative earth, correctly insulated so it can't short out should it be shunted up onto the bonnet. Engine and exhaust system to regulations, is it appropriate? Chassis, underbody, suspension and steering to regulations. Transmission, wheels and tyres to regulations. So for instance, wheels, you're permitted 1 inch bigger than the car was, 1 inch bigger width, 1 inch bigger diameter and 1 inch bigger tyre tread than the car was originally fitted with. That's at the moment, those regs could always change. Interior and accessories, seat belts for post-61 cars. Gosh, can you imagine competing without seat belts? Not sure I like that idea, but that is what that is. It is only saying you just have to have the legal requirement. Post-61, got to have seat belts. Fire extinguisher, at least 1.75 kilos. Really, that should also point out that it's got to be within reach of both occupants whilst harnessed in. And many cars don't. So that's a bit of one. Warning triangle, that's got to be present. Tow rope, yeah, that's got to be present. High-vis jackets, that's pretty much on all events and is an obvious one, especially if on the rally of the tests, as our family like to see, people have made the effort to dress in period, which the organisers used to really insist on. Not quite insist, but they were very strongly encouraged. Sadly, these days, there's fewer of us dressing to the period of the car. But if you are, and you're out in tweeds, you don't really want to be standing around in the dark road at 11 o'clock at night changing an offside wheel in dark tweeds. So, high-vis jacket. Spare light bulbs? Surprised at that. First aid kit. Fine, yeah. Ground sheet or drip tray. Very important because we don't want to upset the hotels and hospitality venues that we go to by pouring oil everywhere. And on the Land's End to John O'Groats, that's a really important one. Spill kit, in case we do have a problem, then you can put down the absorbent spill kit. Life hammer seatbelt cutter, so that's to smash through the windscreen or to cut through your harness. Very important. I know Neil Frost and his dad would have dearly loved to have had that near at hand when they inverted it over a bridge and into a river. Yeah, that's where that really, I think it was probably following Neil and Simon's dreadful incident that came in. SOS OK board, just talked about that a moment ago. Trip meter, make and model, average speed function. Of course, on our sort of rallying, average speed function, definitely not permitted. So that's got to be a no. Advertising to regulations, there is a little bit of advertising. I ought to put Amazon cars onto Gareth's car, shouldn't I really, but I've never quite got round to it. That's it. So there we go, there's a scrutineering card from the RAC. Let's go back to the desk anyway. Oh, why didn't I hand this in the other day? It was all done from the scrutineers' point of view. They, I think, used the mobile phone to confirm or deny that scrutineering had been passed, and indeed the noise test was also the same. Nothing handed to me for the noise test, so I'm presuming as each car went through, the message went through to HQ to say yes, survive. Okay, so then having scrutineered, we sign on. We are given the test book So here we have the tests. Let's go and find a nice one. There are a couple of, well, there's some horrible ones on the last day, but there are a couple of really nice ones as well. And on the rally, the tests, they tend to be much more enjoyable than the HRCR ones. There are...
They tend to be very enjoyable.
The HRCR ones can be, how can I put it, set by minis and needing the brain capacity to, or the ability to comprehend massively complicated, to me, diagrams and remember them without getting confused. Whereas rally the tests tend to be much more open and much easier to read and get right. So it really is not a test of the navigator's mental agility, more a test of just reading it clearly to your driver and letting him or her have a good time out there. So for instance here, we start at that where I've highlighted green, we dip right for cone A, all the way around this grassy triangle, back around, back around, back around, all the way back out. Very simple one there, but there are some lovely ones. So that's the tests for the whole event from Thursday night to Sunday early evening. So that's one bit that for me goes down there between the seats, so I can just grab hold of it as and when necessary. Test book. My map board. Now you can use your map board, obviously it's got to be collapsible. You don't want something that's rigid, because if you're in an accident and it dives into your thorax, you're going to have some problems. So it's collapsible, a couple of bulldog clips on it. Some notes, I have how to reset the clocks here on this. The reminder of the 3/4 rule. The 3/4 rule states that if a section between two TCs is less than 4 miles, then you can go as quickly as you like. But if it's greater than 4 miles, if you arrive inside 3/4 of the time permitted, you will get a huge penalty. So that's the 3/4 rule. And some abbreviations that sometimes we use when marking our map during the competition. GD, CD I should say, cattle grid. B is a brow, i.e. a blind crest. R, rough. HB, handbrake turn. HTF, hard to find junction. This is kind of stuff from the motoring news days, and we use it much less these days. This bit here is for my Curta. It's a translation between speeds and what I dial into the side index. However, back in the days when I used to use speed timetables, this is my hundredths of a mile speed timetable. So I've got from 15 to 30 miles an hour, 0.01 to 0.09, and this tells me what 1/100th of a mile equals, and that's to help me mentally calculate where I'm just trying to come into to get that last control, that last second correct into a control. So yeah, there you go, your map board, quite a useful receptacle for helpful notes. And when we signed on, what we got was a ring binder crammed full of the paperwork for 3 days rallying. There we go. That is how you get from Leeds to Edinburgh whilst rallying. And the road book is telling you how to get from one competitive to the next. And in theory, it is beautifully simple. The look and feel is consistent throughout the book. Let's see now, where are we? Okay, that's the last day there. So, here we go. Let's look at the end of regularity, day 3, regularity 3. And it tells me to 0 the trip at the junction of the finish of the regularity. So now we're at 0, and at 3.08 miles, turn left and turn left into Douglas Square, parking car park. So this was into the time control to log in. And this is the consistent and predictable way that you get from one competitive section to the next competitive section. I think the longest one, was about 22 miles of link section before we were competitive again. Except that on Saturday evening at the golf club rest halt, you checked out, having had a cup of tea and a bowl of soup, got out your map book, and the first thing you see, I could be able to find this, but I don't think I'll be able to find it quickly, is you look, golf club, and then the next instruction box says, 0 trip at junction, turn left. So 95%, I would say, of us did exactly that. And then we all realised when the next instruction didn't make sense on the road that something was wrong. And what they'd done was, in the previous box, in the golf club box, they'd got one pale bit of text saying, depart east-northeast to the junction, turn southeast. Tiny pale single liner, complete look and feel different to the rest of the road book. So very few of us, except for the gods like Neil Frost, actually noticed that. Neil actually noticed it the week before the rally had started. And so many of us were wandering around the lanes trying to make head nor tail of this before we got back to working out where exactly the golf club was, because very few of us had looked on the map where the golf club was. We'd just used the road book to get there. And then spotted this single liner. So pleasingly though, the organisers scrubbed all the penalties that we picked up, because I was basically 8 minutes late out of that. So that would have been 2 minutes of penalties that when you're scrubbing around trying to do 2 seconds into a regularity control, 2 minutes lost is really painful. And I don't suppose they'll do that again. It was just flew in the face of it. You can say, quite rightly, I'm the navigator, it's my responsibility to have read it correctly and in detail. But to change the look and feel just like that was silly. And it was a mistake on the organiser's part. And I think they know that. So, there we go, that is it all. Let's have a look at some other stuff here. What was this one? This is a TC section. Where are we here? Is this Walcott? Ooh, I can't tell you. Anyway, one of the military ranges. And this blue line here is what you have to do. And you're just going, this is plotted on the 1 in 25 map. So detailed map. And you're just trying to follow these tracks and pick up the correct track to get out. So yes, the lovely section, just such great fun. Quite stressful, but if you just choose, if it's the first time you've seen it, you choose to drive it carefully and get the controls right, and then maybe pick up the speed as you get more confident. But the top guys are desperately trying to come in on their due minute at each TC. There'll be a couple that they just won't be able to do. That's how we differentiate between the best of the best. For instance, we were dropping, I think, a minute on about probably 2/3 of the controls. We were dropping down a minute each time. No, maybe not that many, half the controls. So yes. So there we go. That is, as I say, all the information you have to manage as a navigator to get from the start of the rally competitive sections to the end of the rally. And it's a lot of paperwork. It's not all necessarily in pure sequence. Like I say, the regularities tended to be put at the end of the day, so you'd be halfway through, and hence turning over the pages, like so. So when you clean that page and you finish with it, fold it over, you can't accidentally look at it again. That's quite a nice one. Another trick is, for the pages you haven't got to, is you sort of do a similar trick. You grab hold of maybe 10 pages, fold over that bottom corner, and of course they're all folding in slightly less, each one of them has a slightly less of a fold, and so therefore you can generally just put your thumb there and pick up one page without risking picking up 2 or 3 pages and getting the navigation wrong again. So there's another tip, just fold over either top or the bottom, fold over maybe 6 to 10 pages like that, and it should be easy to pick up one page at a time and not mistakenly pick up 2 pages. Okay, this also typically lives down to the right, lives between driver and navigator with my test book down there. Works quite well in the Volvo. Obviously each car it has its own vagaries, but that works well for me, putting them down there. Just briefly, these are my sheets for each regularity, and because I run a Curta, then what I have here is the distance, if we know the distance up front, and if we don't, I leave, so here it says there's a speed change at the departure from the A689, and so as we depart the A689, 3.92 miles, I've logged it down. I can then wind that into the Curta to find out what time I should have been there at precisely 3.92 miles, change the speed and wind it on again. So that's the distance, will always get filled out. Then what is the change? So here the speed change is at a sign that says 12% gradient. Here it's purely at 3.2 miles. Here the speed is valid only for the white road, the track that we went on before reverting back to 30 miles an hour. Depart A689 we've already talked about, 17% gradient for this speed change, and then finally at 11.6 miles we get the final speed change to the end of regularity down to 25 miles an hour. That's the speed we need, and that for my Curta is the factor that you use on the slide to set it up. Then there's space for what was supposed to be the ideal time, what time of day did you actually arrive, therefore what was the elapsed time and what was your penalty. Now I'm just not organised enough to do that yet. The likes of Ali Proctor will be filling all this in. Amy fills in something very similar, but she uses speed timetables. But having an individual piece of paper to do all this on is really good discipline and gives you the ability to recover from mistakes as well. Okay, we're getting towards the end. Stick with me. Finally, okay, that's my pack of spare Curta sheets there. That is 17 maps to get us from Leeds to Edinburgh. I think it's normally 20, often 20 for the rally test, so it's fewer maps this time. But Guy Woodcock assures us that we have more competitive miles than previous events, and yet we finished earlier in the night, which was actually very appreciated. It was nice. I spent more time gently socialising after the finish than I've managed to before, so I think he's probably right. And so those maps, well, I have to say I always worry if I only select the maps I think I'm going to need for the day. I always worry that I've left one in the wrong place. And so these sat also under my feet. So those sat there, my rally bag sat against it, and my feet were there. And if you're slightly less tall than me, then you'll almost certainly have a footrest there. So I could just look down, grab map 73 and start work on it. And that actually worked surprisingly well. I was quite pleased with that. But I did hear a few navigators taking the piss out of me for taking the whole box out for the prelude on the Thursday night. Well, look at that. We now have an empty table. That sitting there is what we as navigators have to have near at hand for a long day's rallying. Water bottles, potty, map board, road book. Oh, and here of course, that's always attached to me, is the Roma. What is a Roma, you ask? Another essential bit of kit. It allows you to quickly plot accurately grid references using this corner. Let me get you some light. There are various different Romas. This is the one I like. As I say, this top right hand corner allows you to quickly plot grid references on your map. You've got something to estimate mileage distance around here if you're trying to work out which is the shortest route, and equally round here is the metric distance. And then these holes are of 200 metre radius, 100 metre radius, and so on. These are for when the organiser tells you a black spot. A black spot is simply a section that you must not go through. So they'll say maybe 100 metre black spot at grid reference such and such, or 200 metre black spot at junction in grid square 2349, and so on. So you'll go in, sketch that black spot on that position, and see what roads therefore become illegal for you. And finally, one really useful one, particularly I think it was Mark Phillip or Lucas, asked me what ESE meant after a grid reference. Well, it's the direction of approach or departure. And here you have the cardinal points around the compass, going north, north-northeast, northeast, east-northeast, east. And so when you're tired, even if you're English and familiar with these cardinal points, I still often refer to this just to make very sure that I haven't plotted something stupid. So I will sometimes actually look at west, south, west and make sure I'm approaching from the right direction, and so on. So there we go, that is a Roma. I personally like it on the end of a ski lift thingy, retractable. Others do just have it simply on a lanyard, for instance. But there we go, a Roma.
Your trophy, Rob.
Sorry?
Your trophy.
Oh yes, so what did we come out? So
Briefly.
Gareth and I, at the end of that, what did we get? So at the beginning of the rally, when you sign on, is that right? Or did that come at the end? No, I think that was the beginning. We got our nice enamelled badge to show that yes, we did indeed compete in 2021. There are people with chains of these hanging off their coats now. The regular competitors have a long chain of these. They look like the Mayor of London or something in full regalia at times. Okay, we got that at the beginning. And when we finished, we got that rather nice RAC Rally the Tests hip flask. That is stainless steel. I think that could be rather nice actually. Emma reckons we should fill it with rum and put it on board our Anderson 22-foot yacht. We then got also a little metal plate because it was Volvo team that won the Mark Trophy. So that, and finally Great Pride, second in class with Gareth, 11th overall, and the class was all Volvos. Our class, extraordinary, all Volvos in our class. We were second in class. Phil Wood in his P1800S was third in class, and Noel Kelly took first in class because, of course, Paul Dias won overall. He doesn't get a class award. So the overall Volvo positions were Paul Dias winner overall, Noel Kelly 5th, we were 11th, and Phil Wood, was he 13th, I think? So there we go, class award, quite pleased with that. Not as good as Emma, who's won an international in her PV 544, the Tour Britannia, when it was a serious rally 20 years ago, more or less. And of course Amy, who's won Land's End to John O'Groats, has got a far more impressive trophy. But we're pleased with that. Okay, that's my Navigator's bag, and that's the stuff we have to get us from A to B via many other places, letters. Thank you very much. I hope if you've got any questions, do just ask me. And gosh, I hope maybe somebody out there might be tempted to join this, because particularly, I enjoy both seats rallying, but really I think I'm a navigator. I enjoy working with maps. I enjoy the controlled stress of being responsible for getting my driver through the event. and it is a challenge. It is an intellectual challenge. Emma says I'm waffling on. If you want to start this, then give me a shout because it's great fun. Thank you.